Welcome to today's Destination Unknown. I'm your host, Alyssa Hall, and today I got the bright idea for today's subject that I wanted to try to film outside here again today to show you how beautiful the garden has gotten. There's Huckleberry, my pug assistant, helping in the background. Lots of stuff growing in the cage. And I wanted to come film out here today because it seemed appropriate for today's subject, which is that of Lughnasadh or Lammas, which is one of the 8 pagan festivals that we talk about when we're looking at the Wheel of Time, when they're looking at that from a pagan perspective. So what are the pagans? The Celtic, another form of talking about this is to link it to the Irish and Welsh practices that were happening, and that would be part of our Celtic backgrounds. All of that material informed what we now call the modern pagans or the pagan. And I don't pretend to be an expert on it. I just happen to know some and I've gone to some celebrations. On the channel, we talked about Beltane, as well as we talked about the summer solstice most recently. Even before that, we talked about the equinox in March and then Imbolc back in February. Well, these are all of the same cycle of the 8 holidays. So you have the 2 equinoxes, the 2 solstices, and then the 4 other holidays that are roughly halfway between all of those. And they're all seasonally based, which is why I thought it would be so great to get out here and get a look at some of the fruits of the season, because today's topic is exactly that. Lughnasadh is the one that sits between the summer solstice, when we have the most sun and we're celebrating the beginning of our cycle of growth and fertility. Well, here we are now. It's roughly 6-8 weeks later, not quite 8 yet, but 6 weeks later. Everything has had a chance to continue to grow if it's been met with the right conditions. And luckily, we've had a lovely, lush year up here on the mountaintop, had a lot of rain, and it's been bringing out tons of my pumpkin flowers. I've got some great pumpkins on the vine. I've also had some first harvests, and that's what the holiday itself is about. So Lughnasadh or Lammas is a Christian version of the Lughnasadh holiday which preceded it. So Lughnasadh is a reference to the Celtic god Lugh, who is a god of craftsmanship. Now, what does that have to do with first harvest? We're not really quite sure. That one seems to be kind of lost to time. There's some discrepancy about whether or not it was Lugh's wedding feast day that was still being remembered historically as a pagan holiday and festival, or if it was actually had to do with a holiday with his foster mother, and maybe that we were recognizing a festival with her at that time of year. Regardless of that, that was the earliest incarnation of a celebration that happens on August 1st. So today, of course, is August 2nd. I'm filming on the day itself, as I often do. And it's a beautiful cloudy day. It feels like a Lughnasadh day. So it's about that first harvest. It's considered a grain festival, or the first harvest, because you wouldn't want to cut your grains before the 1st of the August. So before your Lughnasadh holiday, before Lammas, as it later became known, you wouldn't want to cut any grains before that. They wouldn't fully be harvested. But on this holiday, you would cut grains for the first time, and therefore that night you would bake the first loaves of that season, of the grains from that season. So you would begin to taste the harvest, and the hard work would begin to manifest itself in a material way that you can now enjoy and put back inside you. That to me is important when you look at that metaphorically, because metaphors are what we're applying when we're doing metaphysical work. We're taking a lot of the same concepts. So even if you're not out there sighing down your own harvesting wheat, I'm not. I don't pretend to be. I'm not grinding out the stuff. No, none of that's happening. But baking bread is one of the most common ways to celebrate this holiday, and that's why specifically. And that's how it got the name of Lammas, which is a reduction of the word loaf, Mass, where the Christians, early Christianity came along and, as they often did, adapted pre existing holidays that the pagans were celebrating and said, hey, let's call it this now and make it about us. And so they did that with Lughnasadh and made it Lammas by asking that the loaves, the first loaves of the season, should come and be honored at this Mass and be blessed so that we would continue to have that bounty and enjoy that. So it was, again, the same concept being reapplied as religion came along and took over and overlapped pre-existing traditions that had already been there. It's interesting to me that there are also traditions with the Corn Maiden and the Corn Dance, specifically the Santo Domingo Pueblo out here in the, I almost said Pacific Southwest. No, no, no. The desert Southwest. Here we are in the Southwest. And our Native American culture, there are a lot of Pueblo cultures located around the area where I'm at, outside Albuquerque. And so up north in our I believe it's to the north. I hope I remember my geography right. But yeah, that's exactly where they have a corn maiden and corn festival happening in different Pueblo cultures as well. And they happen at the same time of year for the same reasons. It's first harvest, but their corn was, of course, much more of a harvest than you would see of the grains like you did in the agriculture that you would have seen happening in Ireland or in southern England in long times past. So those are the origins of the holiday, but there are ways you can continue to celebrate it today. And to me, it's the reason I love to talk about these holidays, because they're very special to me, not so much because they represent my religious beliefs, my spiritual beliefs, perhaps. I wouldn't call myself part of their religion. That would be appropriating it to a point that I don't actually practice. I don't consider myself a practitioner. But I love to mark these holidays, and here's why. The older I get, the faster time is getting. And if I don't build in some of these mindful practices of trying to remember, oh yes, today is whatever holiday, whatever time of year, it just goes faster and faster. And I need those mindful practices to slow me down and to ground me a bit. And so that's one of the reasons that I like to talk about them a lot. Not so much, again, because I'm a practitioner of their particular belief system, but because I think it's a mindful practice that we can gain from. So with that being said, if you're not into baking any bread, and lately we've had some great rains, I feel a little sprinkles happening on me right now, which means I should wrap it up. Yeah, so if you're not into baking bread, it's a great time for me, was what I was about to say, because it's nice and cloudy, so it's nice weather for baking indoors, not too hot. Maybe baking's not your thing, though. Maybe you just don't feel like it. Lighting a candle, bringing the warmth of the upcoming season, drawing in the heat of the summer, as well as extending that into the fall season. As we know, the festivals that are coming next is a way to use that. So lighting a candle is considered another. You can also decorate an entire altar. Altar decorations are pretty common for all of the high holidays, and those are places where you want to gather what's special to you. What do you want to reflect on right now? What do you want to draw more into your life right now? Those are the things. And what do you want to give thanks to? That's also another thing you can include on an altar space if you choose to make an altar, or even a table decoration. Maybe an altar feels too formal or you don't know where you'd put it. Consider it a table decoration for the time being if you need. It's a great way to just kind of bring it into a central living space. So again, that mindfulness is something you come back to repeatedly. What else? Let's see from my notes. Okay, so another one you can do, having a brew is another one they talk about for celebrating this holiday. Again, that's a way to bring grains into your celebration. Obviously, that wouldn't be the first grains of this holiday because of the whole fermentation process. Those are last season's hops. I don't know. I'm not that way. But a brew, okay, if you're into that, go drink a beer and think about the mindfulness of the grain season as you do. And getting outside, going for a walk. They always talk about that for these warmer season ones, when you can get outside and reconnect with nature as it sprinkles on top of me. Feel those moments outside, because we can. To me, like I said, I need those mindful practices to slow me down at least a little bit as I go rushing through the pace of my life. And last practice is to bring in your early harvest. So if you have anything like tomatoes or strawberries or everything else I have, like my pumpkins are ripening on the vine, and I wonder if I can get you guys to a peek at my very best pumpkin before we go. Let's give her a look. She hasn't changed color yet, but can you see her? There she is. Look how big she is. That's a sugar pumpkin too, you guys. So she's not going to get any bigger. She's just going to get oranger, and she's starting to go a little yellow already. So that's one of my best so far. So happy Lughnasadh. Dancing at Lughnasadh, the festival of Lughnasadh is celebrated to this day. So if you're a theater buff, you might even recognize Dancing at Lughnasadh. And there are all the dancing plants here in my garden, as well as some beautiful flowers. Take a moment to be thankful for the way it looks today, because before we know it, it's not going to look like this. It'll be snow everywhere, and the harvest will have come and gone for the season. So let's give thanks and keep listening.